Hey everyone, welcome to Tickets to Travel. On today's episode, we meet travel ticketing and operations advisor Natalia Botero. Natalia is the former GM of North America for Shotgun, as well as spent time at travel experience company Pollen and little-known company called Airbnb. Natalia will share her insights on the current event ticketing landscape, new players in the field, and how do tickets contribute to the overall travel experience. And what are some key considerations when operating a ticket-first travel experience? Since Natalia's most recent role was with Shotgun, Shotgun features are designed to help event organizers build their brand, run operations, grow their communities, and refocus on artist direction and event production. Shotgun is also the most popular app to find music events and parties in France, and now they are coming to North America. So stay with us because Tickets to Travel starts now. Welcome to Tickets to Travel. I'm your host, Mario Bedouin, and today we're here with Natalia Botero. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you for having me here today, Mario.
I've looked at your LinkedIn profile a bit, and you have an extensive background in not just ticketing, but also in travel experiences. Can you walk us through your background a bit so the audience understands your expertise?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually started more on the real estate side of things. That was kind of one of my first roles. And I quickly realized that what I enjoyed about that role was really more the hospitality aspect of real estate. That's where I moved to really work with Hotel Tonight. That was later acquired by Airbnb. My first role at Hotel Tonight was really helping with the go-to-market strategy and expansion of supply acquisition for Latin America. And then COVID hit. So the hotel landscape was kind of dead for quite some time. And after that, I moved to Airbnb to work on the vacation rental space, managing inventory for 5 different states and Latin America as well.
Got it. And so that sort of puts you in a good position to understand how supply on the travel side gets distributed, how it gets contracted, obviously. And so how did tickets sort of move into this? What part of your career started that piece?
Yeah, Airbnb also has a part that they sell and contract experiences for their community. I was curious a little bit about that, and that when you and I started working together at Pollen was this exciting company that raised quite $115 million, yeah. Right. And it was the perfect opportunity for me to get my hands on more with experiential travel and experiences itself. So when I left Airbnb to join Pollen, the goal was to really scale the supply department or the supply team to really scale it and make it like
operationally functioning.
Right, especially with hotels. And I think that is the biggest challenge that I see today with companies that are trying to really blend or marry ticketing inventory with hotel inventory as well.
Yes, it was kind of the same challenge that I realized during Pollen as well, is that a lot of the hotel contracting, the connectivity pieces didn't exist in a lot of ways. But once you add a ticket to it, or these packages that were being built, the demand was just off the charts. I remember very vividly when we first did the J Balvin packages out of Las Vegas, I literally saw 2,000 room nights disappear in 20 minutes. And that's when I was like, there's something here. This is a different model of travel, because as I think we were talking about off mic a little bit, is on, Forbes had an article about music tourism, and at this particular time in history, it's never been more popular, right? There's never been this big of an impact. And we kind of say Taylor Swift quite a bit on this show, but I would give her a lot of the credit for driving hotel room rates, driving airfares, really through the event itself. And so your background as well from a ticketing perspective and being an advisor to this, what do you do in that space right now?
Yeah, I was formerly at Shotgun, where I helped basically expand the supply in the US. And after I left, I started really collaborating with festival operators because there's a big gap in the space of, first of all, there's 1,000 ticketing companies to choose from, and it's quite overwhelming understanding what is the best ticketing company as an operator to move forward with. It's a very different offering if you're an amphitheater, right? If you're an arena, if you are a micro festival versus if you are a massive festival. And so the needs and what they're looking to do with the different offerings, it's quite challenging. Similar to, do I want to blend my festival with hotel room nights? Right. And so really there's an opportunity to educate operators as an advisor other than working myself as a part of a ticketing company.
That's right. I mean, I must run into this conversation quite a bit. There's two pieces to it. One, what is an experience, right? So
right.
Start looking at this travel perspective. You got theme park people. Well, we're an experience. I have a tour through Central Park. That's an experience. I'm a museum. That's an experience. But the thing that ties them all together is a ticket. And so there are different types of tickets. And we'll talk more about that throughout our series. But not every ticket is treated the same way.
Right.
From an operational perspective, how it's mapped within a particular venue, if it's a time ticket, there's a lot of variance in variables within ticketing in general. And so the festival piece, the venue operator piece is where I think you have some very intimate knowledge on. So like, what are some of the things that they have to consider in their specialized, situation for ticketing? Like what makes one ticketing system better than the other?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things, right? First is, as a venue, you want to have access to your cash. So there's different ticketing companies that give you access to your cash faster than others, right? It's your ticketing revenue. You can access it whenever you want. And that's kind of also a red flag for other ticketing companies that delay releasing that ticketing revenue, because most often than not, that ticketing revenue then is repurposed as an internal cash flow to acquire new business in the entertainment space.
I understand. So that cash is used to sort of secure various contracts with a particular venue. And this is a regular occurrence. This is something that maybe the average fan does not understand, but in the ticketing business, it's sort of an accepted thing.
It's an accepted thing, and I think it's not regulated, as we know. This is another episode where we can dive into all the ticketing companies that surface and collapse, and it's mostly mismanagement of funds assigned to promoters or venues, cash assigned to acquisition of new business.
Right. As of September 20th, 2024, there's been a report this past week about the ticketing system called LYTE and how they have pretty much closed up shop. Any thoughts about or what occurred during this entire, I guess, going on for a few years? Because I was doing a bit of research, and even when we were over at Pollen, they had acquired Fest Ticket, which would have been a kind of a differentiator for them. I think they were talking about just tremendous growth because of that. But what are your thoughts about LYTE? I mean, obviously you ran into them a bit at Shotgun. But.
Listen, I think from an investor perspective, it's not great if we're in the music space and we keep seeing a lot of ticketing companies collapse. It's not great because it raises concerns and it becomes harder to really raise money for the industry. So that's the first thing. The second thing is a lot of these companies that really develop a book of business and a business itself by raising cash. LYTE is an example, DICE is another example. It really makes it harder for them to actually bootstrap and build a sustainable business. And the third thing is, I think there's red flags, right? Like as a partner, as a promoter, festival operator, the first question I would ask to avoid running into companies that the LYTEs of the world is, do I have access to my ticketing revenue instantly? And if not, when and why, what causes that delay?
I think that's a huge point. One of the things, if I'm an average fan though, in that ticketing business, because not only is it, there's a relationship to get bigger contracts, but there's also a relationship with the promoter.
Right.
And how does that relationship typically work?
I mean, it depends. There's two avenues really. One is it's the right product, and it's a match, but most often than not is an acquisition game.
Got it.
Right? So most often it's a multi-year contract. How many events are you doing? Let me see your past ticketing data to kind of understand how much ticketing revenue you're going to bring. And most often than not, there's a sponsorship on the table. And that sponsorship comes from the estimated ticketing revenue that promoter or festival operator is going to bring to the table. And what I see most often than not is a lot of ticketing companies give extensive sponsorships that in that way the ticketing companies are not profitable ever.
Right.
And they do that with hoping of acquiring a bigger book of business and then expecting that their clients or their customers are just going to stay. And that's another really hard thing in this industry, retention. That's, I think, in like acquisition, because it's a sponsorship game. It's like, okay, do you have money in the bank to pay for sponsorships? But the other thing is like, okay, after your contract's over, are you happy and satisfied with the product? Are you happy and satisfied with your account manager? Are you happy overall with the relationship? And most often than not, it's a no. And that's when you see promoters, festivals, and venues hopping every 2-3 years to another ticketing.
System.
Yep.
When you talked to quite a few of them and there's a no, why? What really, is it the customer support aspect of it? There's no technology, or there's different things they want to sell on that platform that isn't really accommodated by that particular system? What is it?
I think it really depends to the segment of customer that we're talking to, right? Some customers see ticketing as a brand opportunity, as a branding opportunity. So if you are an underground electronic party,
Sure.
you want to be a resident advisor, right? You want to be part of that community because it facilitates discovery. If you want an electronic music, that's where you're going to go. Yeah. Your instinct, right? It doesn't mean necessarily that it's the best longer term for that particular client to grow their own community in an organic way, but they become dependent on that discovery platform. So that's just one example. There's other potential clients that can say, I want to work with the ticketing company that will enable best payment plans, because in American fashion, everything is an installment, everything is credit, everything is paid out through installment. And so that's another big thing. Big opportunity. If you, for example, look at Frontgate, they have documents on their website on what did they focus on product-wise in 2023. And it's all payment plans, because that's where a lot of festivals will see, perhaps like sometimes if it's properly done, incremental revenue. But if it's poorly done, then they are stuck kind of with quote unquote bad revenue, because they take on installments and then those tickets never, there's a lot of churn. There's a lot of customers that don't finish paying off that payment plan.
Interesting. Especially, these tickets are not cheap.
They're not cheap.
And when you start to, enhance the experience with a VIP or hospitality package of some type, yes, I think those installments are very important to that fan. So you brought up one thing that I thought was interesting, in that you said, hey, resident advisors for that electronic music culture. I didn't necessarily know that. I think that branding opportunity for a ticketing system and who they market to is something that, again, the average fan or even someone who's in the industry doesn't really know. Are there other brands that you've talked to or worked with who are trying to key in into a specific community that you think has the ability to sort of take off?
I mean, yes and no. I think all ticketing companies start with a specific focus. I think if you look at Tixer over the years, they were super focused on music experiences, and they started to diversify. If you see now their website, you will see there's comedy, there's food shows, sports, right? I think they're trying to start competing a little bit more with the big brands in arenas, stadiums, but those are the most expensive kind of partnerships to get into, because they require sponsorships and really hefty sponsorships to go and secure them for a few years.
Got it. So Tixer's one.
Tixer's one.
There was a big release about Posh VIP tickets. getting, was it 22 million in funding?
Yeah.
If you don't know about Posh, what is it? What is their sort of value proposition to one, the festival or party organizer, event organizer, and then to the fans? What does that mean to?
Yeah, I think from what I know from Posh, I think they're doing a really great job at, if you go to an event, you're sharing with your community that you're going to this event. And if my friends know that I have great taste in music, that I have great taste, like they want to do what I'm doing, it's very easy to connect in that way. And most often, like the Gen Z, that's how they really connect, through social media. And so I think they're really leveraging the ability to connect communities through social media. I think they're doing that really well. And I think their focus is a little bit different from the regular ticketing platforms, which is diversification of events and really the creator economy, right? You can be Mario, you have your 9 to 5, but you enjoy
having dinner parties,
you enjoy DJing, but you want to do it, in a very curated event, and people trust that you're going to throw an amazing event.
Sure.
So really putting the hands of event creation, instead of just going to the big shows, really creating intimate settings for these type of experiences.
Yeah, no, that I feel like that is a bit of a differentiator, especially when you start to target Gen Z, different than the millennials, different than Gen X, obviously. So I'm curious, in your research as well, what are you hearing about the big guys? I run into, obviously everyone knows Ticketmaster, they know Access because of their affiliations with Live Nation and with AEG. But what are some of the things that these new brands in ticketing are looking at to say, hey, there's a gap here, we're going to do this a little bit better?
I mean, it's hard to say. Specifically with Ticketmaster, which I've run more into front gate, which is obvious.
Festival end of Ticketmaster.
Right.
Yes.
I do know that they have quite a bit of churn, mostly due to payment plan limitations. Right. And most often those festivals go to Tixer. And so I know that the biggest limitation that they have is payment plans. Now, Access is an interesting player because, yes, they're probably like the second biggest in terms of market share in the US. Yeah. But what they're doing really well is they don't want to be the ticketing partner for everyone out there. They really qualify their clients, and they really want to work with partners that have enough business that really using their product makes sense. And so that's nice because they're not going to come in really aggressively with a sponsorship. They're going to really vet their partners as partners vet them. Something important to mention is really front gate. There's quote unquote sponsorship is really selling off your festival tickets to their database because they're the biggest, they have the largest database in the entertainment space worldwide. But I think there's a misconception there because festival operators, email marketing is dead. I don't remember the last time I looked at my email and was targeted for a ticket. And I was like, wow, this actually sounds great. Let me go to this.
Let me convert.
Right.
On that email.
Right. On that email, that if it was that easy, right? And I think a lot of old school festival operators really do think that it's going to make a difference. And I'd like to challenge them and ask them, why don't you ask for conversion rates of those emails? How many of those emails actually converted in ticket sales?
No, it's big. I think, when I worked in for a ticketing distribution platform, what we would constantly hear is, Ticketmaster versus SeatGeek. Well, that's another piece. People don't know that SeatGeek is actually a primary ticketing system as well.
Right.
It used to sit into Barclays. And so the marketing, Ticketmaster all day long. The tech, SeatGeek. So depending on how, maybe you have a bunch of Gen Z people who are working in your box office who want better tech, but there's nothing wrong with them learning the existing legacy tech in Ticketmaster. And I think both companies have done really well in terms of finding what's gonna work for those people. But again, I think this particular show is about some of these up-and-comers, other brands that come to mind that people should consider when looking at their needs for a ticketing system.
Yeah, I've been looking lately into ESOL. They've been doing a great job in terms of really trying to make the whole festival and travel experience a little bit more seamless. Right. I know that a lot of festivals in Europe are kind of switching to them. I want to say also, I mean, it really depends where you're at, right? In the US. If you go more to the West Coast, you're going to have e-tickets. You're going to have C-tickets. It's kind of a little bit all over the place. Really, C-tickets, it's kind of the player that they provide great sponsorships. You're usually competing with these type of partners for these hefty contracts, but they invest their cash in sponsorships and not necessarily in product. And so it really depends like what the customer is looking for. Are you looking for a bigger installment in cash in advance, or are you looking for a product that's really going to give you the tools for you to grow your community, monetize your community, and continue to be successful?
Yeah, you bring up ESOL, which I think is interesting because they do play right in that field of ticket plus hotel,
right, and
packaging for mainly festivals that I see. Has there been? There are other companies like Crew Fair, and I think there's Impact, who there's a bunch of those in that particular space. But we used to work at a company called Pollen, which for all intents and purposes started a lot of this in a way, and it wasn't that long ago. But at the scale that we were all working through it, there was a lot of consideration, maybe not so much for the ticket, but definitely for the hotel and the overall experience, and putting that together because those experiences were cheap and they had a payment plan type of setup. So switching gears to the travel part. So we talked a little bit about tickets on the travel part. A lot of these, I'm going to know the answers, but like from your perspective, like being inside of the operational aspects of doing a buyout at a hotel, what are some of the key considerations, or at least some of the challenges that you ran into while you were at Pollen? Because I don't think that that's thought about enough in terms of a lot of I think the misconception is that, oh, well, I just book a hotel room on Expedia. Why can't I just do that at Pollen or somewhere else, where you kind of have one event, it's static, there's been a group room block contracted for that entire property, versus if you go to an OTA, for example, you can pick as many room nights as possible. So what were some of the considerations, at least from your position, that some of these festival organizers should think about once they start to work with a travel partner as well?
Yeah, I think first things first, demand validation, right? Okay, is the music experience, matching, or really is my community wanting to go to this particular destination? And are they price sensitive to paying this rate in hotels to go to my music experience? That's the first thing, because I think there's there's like a supply saturation of music experiences that are not selling really well. Access to capital, this just changed last week, but access to capital is expensive this year. And so there needs to be a market correction for that, right? You see Burning Man this year, they struggled to sell tickets. They really did. They were trying to move tickets very far out. And so that's a consideration. First, demand validation. Is this event going to work in this destination? Then after you go through that is really trying to streamline operations, because the old school of contracting hotels and managing attrition it's painful. It's painful, it's risky, it's expensive if you go over that attrition and you're stuck with rooms. So that is something to consider as well. If there's an opportunity to facilitate an integration because you've done your demand validation and you know that you're going to be working with this property longer term, that's the way to go. The big challenge is if I am going to a concert and the concert's in Mexico and I look at their hotel packages, and if I am stuck with a hotel with really tight cancellations because of that attrition in the contract, I'd rather book through Expedia, that I can cancel the room if I want to 3 months in advance. And so why take that risk?
Yeah, I think the connectivity aspect is tough, because what most people don't understand is the way that the hotel is being contracted for a specific event. You mentioned attrition, and attrition is a piece that, how do we define it?
I guess for layman's purposes,
yes,
it is the deadline that you have in a contract to reduce rooms And the terms of that reduction change per contract, right? It could be 20% of the contracted rooms. It could be by nights. So that really depends, and that's a whole other episode. But it's basically until what date, what timeline in your contract you can reduce either rooms or nights without having to pay for that.
Yes, because I'm a little rusty, but I remember most of the contracts, unless you had a really amazing relationship with the hotel, and that takes a little bit of time.
Right.
It was it 10% upfront, 20, and then 30 days prior to arrival, it's 50. That's typically how that works in terms of paying for that block. So
right.
You give them that 30-day window to, and here's where I was getting at originally. The rooming list and the connectivity piece is very labor intensive, especially when you have, I think what the other piece that people don't understand when they do these travel or music experiences is that you're buying one block, and then sometimes you have a 2-night stay, sometimes you have a 4-night stay, and trying to allocate that room first from the brand's perspective who sold it, and then to push that rooming list back to the hotel or resort to confirm all of it, and then be able to push back a confirmation number for that guest to feel secure that they have a room assigned. Very, very hard. And at this particular time, there isn't true group connectivity. And so essentially, when a company comes into a particular resort, you got to throw people at it. There's a number of people in that reservations department who take the rooming lists that come in, and hopefully you've done it 30 days prior. And then they are manually entering in these confirmations, the bookings, and then getting a confirmation number and then communicating that back. That is a piece that not many people understand. And I think that creates a ton of labor and just operational inefficiencies is the lack of connectivity.
2 call outs also from that point, rooming list. First, that's a big problem for the person booking the room.
Yes.
But when you're going on these music tourism trips or experiential travel, you're not going by yourself. You're most likely sharing that room with your significant other or with friends. So what you were just mentioning is just for that the person that books the room. You're not even talking about the people that come with the person that booked the room. That's another layer of complexity added there without the proper connectivity. And another call out from a festival perspective is it's a challenge to manage cash flow. And if you are contracting hotel rooms in the old school way, you have to give deposits, right? And so when you're paying those deposits because you need to lock in that inventory, you're giving up your cash where you could be using that cash to secure talent. And talent is going to be, depending on what type of festival you are, the main driver of those ticket sales.
The main driver of the demand.
Right.
Which is typically the highest cost on your P&L.
Right. And so if you, as a festival, if you have developed a great relationship with the hotel, you've developed connectivity, you can retain a little bit of that cash flow because you're integrated directly, and you can repurpose that cash flow to really book talent instead of booking hotel rooms.
I mean, these are all great pieces to consider. I don't know if anybody, and I think you brought it up with easel, and I know that's more of it's a tool for the promoter to manage it themselves to a certain degree. It's not like easel's putting together that type of, or I could be wrong, in terms of contracting the hotels and making sure that rooming lists and confirmation numbers get delivered in the right way. Are there any other, I guess, people or companies in the space that you've seen that are doing it right? Because I think if you and I had the opportunity to work on that when we were at Pollen, that might have made life, a lot more easier. Have you seen anything along the lines?
I think, quote unquote, right would be really developing that integration. And I haven't seen it. Not yet, at least. I don't know enough about easel to say if they're doing it right or not. I do know that I haven't run into a company that's doing direct API integration to really acquire hotel inventory for experiences. It's not an easy task. That's why people haven't done it. But I think it'll be nothing that's worth it is easy,
Completely. It's actually one of the reasons why I decided to do this podcast, because I think that if we put enough attention to a problem within this industry of merging travel and entertainment, connectivity being the piece, because I feel like ticketing systems and the legacy travel systems, whether it's a PMS, CRS, or GDS, have not had the appropriate integrations to make this so simple. Like, yes, Taylor Swift should have a bunch of different hotel packages. It shouldn't be, hey, here goes the ticket on sale, and then everybody has really high rates. It should be one and the same. It should be all connected. And to my knowledge, I know that there's a few people in the space who are working on this problem, and you may or may not see them or hear from them on Tickets to Travel.
The Tickets to Travel podcast is always brought to you by Expo Travel. Expo Travel is experiences optimized travel, assisting B2B startups and companies with business development in online travel and entertainment ticketing distribution. If your company is looking for ways to boost revenue, increase average order values, or activate your member base with either travel or entertainment ticketing, contact the team at Expo Travel for a consultation today. Visit xpotravel.com. That's xpotravel.com for more information.
So back to Pollen for just a second, because that's how we met. I try not to stress the implosion, if you will, of Pollen, but we met tons of people. I always say to everybody, it's like, I'm probably one of the only travel guys who knows how to book Beyonce at this point, or understand sort of the dynamics of the music industry or how festival operations work. What was some of your fondest memories of working at Pollen? Because I think it expanded both of our networks, and you are very similar to me in that you had a travel background.
Yeah.
And then we moved into kind of ticketing and the experiences piece. So what do you remember about that experience?
Yeah, I think I really enjoyed really understanding more how venues operate when they're booking these big headliners, J Balvin, Karol G, Justin Bieber. So that's really great to see how venues operate in that sense. And I think something great that you and I learned was add-ons to experiences. And how can add-ons really help drive more of that demand for shows that aren't doing that great?
Yes, ancillary revenue. I chuckled because I didn't know who Karol G was. And then we went to J Balvin in Vegas.
And then you're like, oh, I know her.
Well, she was backstage with us. And she's like, hello, everybody. Hello. And I was like, who is this? What is this? And then it turns out she jumps on stage and like kills it. No, I think you're right. Ancillaries are key. I think what people don't understand is the term perceived value. So like if we're doing a show in Cancun, which, I mean, how many of those did we work on? And then you had a jet skiing tour as part of that experience. It's maybe $100 per person. But if you put Justin Bieber on that jet ski with you, it could be $1,000 per person. What are some of the experiential pieces of these music experiences that you've seen that you think really work, or what's the home run in terms of maybe the economics of it or just the perceived value?
Yeah, I think it really depends what experience you're selling, right? If you're selling an experience that's about wellness, that's about, curated DJs, and like adding experiences around that fit your brand would really go a long way. I think the best way to think about it is I want the people that buy the token, my ticket to this event, to have their itinerary plan from A to C. All they need to do is buy that token, buy that ticket. They don't need to plan anything else. And so I think most often festival operators go a little too on the loose and creating really complex things that don't add to the experience. That's when it's not as attractive.
Give me an example of that.
I'm trying to think, like perhaps a random yoga class when you're doing an Afro House festival. Like,
no, it's true, because it's a cheap way.
It's a cheap way, but does it really go? Right. Like I've seen a lot of festivals do like shuffle dance classes. And depending on the music, it actually goes really well because there's a community of shufflers that go to these events that want to connect with their fellow dancers and really, immerse in that experience and then rave together. Right. So, and again, scheduling that class is probably not going to break the bank, but it's going to bring sub-communities of your community together.
Right. No, it's big. It reminds me of, I used to work for this company called Living Social, and we would do these packages at bed and breakfast. And it was just the right way to market it in a lot of ways to a bed and breakfast, because at that point it was millennials was the key audience, right? And the bed and breakfast, we walk in the door and say, let's be honest, your audience, they're dying. They're literally passing away. You got doilies here. You got, it's a very old property. So how are you going to get new people into the pipeline? How are you going to target those millennials? And they're like, we have no clue. Well, you're going to sell a package that we're going to drop the marketing right in New York City. And if you're a 2 to 3 hour drive, you're going to be able to, well, how do I build a package? We would literally walk around the property and be like, is that an ice cream maker? Like, yeah, great. Well, we can make an ice cream making class, perceived value of $50 per person per night. And then, you know what, we schedule it. Same thing with a bar, drink, a mixology class. These perceived value pieces, I think, was sort of the training for us to be very creative in how to build a package. And so essentially now you have this on a larger scale with these various travel experience in terms of perceived value in the add-ons. What are some of the things to look out for in travel experiences coming up? Has anything sort of struck your fancy and said, hey, listen, this is the new thing?
Honestly, no, because I think the biggest challenge there...
It still exists here right now.
Right. It's the marketing of experiential and music experiences. If I find out discovery first, it's the main issue, right? Like how, if you're not quote unquote on the scene, if you don't go to all the festivals, right? If you just...
You're not a festie.
Right. Yep. How do you discover events that align with what you like? I know there's platforms out there like Bands in Town, but not everybody knows about these, right? So really matching the right client with the right experience. That's been a challenge, and it's a challenge that we encounter at Pollen. I think that's number one. I think also going back to connectivity, when you do find an experience that has everything packaged, as a consumer, it's still better for me to buy the ticket, look at all the hotels, because I do like vetting my hotels. Right. Not everyone does, but I do. And really selecting the hotel that I like to stay in with more flexibility, because after COVID, people are booking more than ever last minute. They're buying tickets to experiences at the very last minute. They don't care if they need to pay premium for it.
Right.
Because flexibility has a price.
Yes. So it's discoverability and connectivity to give the power back to the fan to make sure that they can custom. It's almost, here's the content, but I get to customize it.
Right.
And having the technology in between to allow them to do that.
Yeah. And just to add a little bit to that discovering experiences. Okay, say you use Spotify, right? And you tell me your favorite artist on Spotify.
Currently, let's say Jungle.
Okay. Oh, love Jungle. Sure. Saw them in Red Rocks. Amazing. Okay. But imagine Light Flex. Imagine you go on Spotify, you listen to Jungle, and you're like, okay, let me discover through Spotify, when are they going to be playing? Spotify will only have tickets of ticketing partners that they've integrated with. Right. And they don't most often integrate to small players. So there is a middleman in there, which is Bands in Town. But there's so many intricacies for that integration to go smoothly and for your event to pop up there to be discovered. Also, that's assuming you listen to music on Spotify. You might be on Apple Music. You might be on Amazon Music. So the travel to discovery is pretty disjointed from a streaming music perspective. And then when you're like, okay, let's forget it. You're not going to discover Jungle through your streaming preferred app. Then you really have to go through all the ticketing players out there to see who's really selling them.
Right. Unless you think about it, because this is all in a very short kind of behavioral time period, right? Versus I'm a true fan, I'm going to go to the Jungle website and find where they're
right.
And then you have sort of this official partnership
right.
as to whoever they're going to buy it from. Most people, especially Gen Z, they don't really think about it that way. They want everything to be done right.
Easy. Right.
No, it's a huge point. One thing I was curious about, I mean, you spent some time at Shotgun, who has a giant following in France and also Europe and other markets. What's sort of your takeaway from festival operators in Europe versus ones who are here, or even just nightclubs? How does the cultures differ from international markets to US or North America?
Yeah, I think it really depends on, I think there's a branding perspective to it, right? Because Shotgun is so big in France, there's a discoverability. If you go out in France, you download Shotgun, and that's how you discover events.
It's accepted. Everybody does.
Everybody does this. This is how you discover events. It's a different dynamic here because you're not necessarily going to download the app because it's such a competitive market in the US and find all of the events that you want to go to. And so that changes the dynamics of why festival operators and clubs work with Shotgun. Shotgun, what they do really well is they help organizers build communities and really monetize them. So really they, geeking out a bit, they really do add filters to databases so you can slice your community in different ways and target them. So you can target the people that buy the most expensive tickets, and really you can push some marketing campaigns to them versus like the people that have only bought one ticket and the least expensive ticket. I think it's like a really smart way to think about it, but I think customer profile in the US is not, or transparently in France or anywhere entertainment-wise in the world, as advanced to really capitalize that and use that. Because you have a lot of old school operators still running the businesses.
That makes sense. So, it's on them a bit to do the training and the educating.
And that's really hard if you're selling tech as a service.
Yes. I started this chat with talking about the different types of experiences. And one thing that's been kind of top of mind for a lot of people lately, especially with the Skipped Global Forum being in the city this week, is Airbnb and their approach to experiences. As an ex-person from working there, what do you think they define an experience as?
I think an experience by Airbnb standards can be defined. Staying at a Airbnb is an experience itself because you're experiencing someone else's home, culture, tradition, language, local economies. And so I think their vision is really, okay, you go to Rome, you stay at a really cool Airbnb, and then you go make pasta with a nonna, which, by the way, this grandma is one of the top experience hosts in the platform. Yeah, from my time there. She teaches, I actually went to her experience with a group, like a team activity, and we did pasta, and it was amazing. From California, I learned how to make cacio e pepe from scratch.
And so in those types, so it's more of a host experience.
Right. Because
with the issue that comes up when you talk to theme parks, attractions, tour operators within each destination, or even a museum, because there was some thought around some host saying, I'm going to go buy a group of tickets and I'm going to walk them through the museum.
Right. I'm going to be your host, not only your Airbnb host, but your city host.
And that sort of rubbed these attractions and people and museum people the wrong way because they have people who are trained hosts.
Right.
But also, it's not really exposing all the benefits of being a group at that particular attraction or museum or whatever it may be. And so, do you think that they will ever sort of merge that experience and a host experience in a way that the bigger experience community would accept it? Because they are kind of this outlier. Everyone's just like sitting there thinking like, what is Chesky going to say? How's this going to...
I would be surprised if they actually don't do it or if they're not working towards that, because people that choose to do an experience with your Airbnb host, for example, it seems like a more intimate experience than going to directly the museum or going to another company like Get Your Guide, right? And looking for experiences there. I think it's a great opportunity to keep everything in-house. You book your Airbnb, you know how Airbnb works. You can look at the experience, the reviews, you can add it there. And so it's a good way to keep everything under one roof. I would be surprised if they don't do it.
Makes sense. I mean, I know the brand, the culture, the overall design are kind of the priorities for Airbnb.
Yeah.
And so, over the last, I want to say 5-6 years, it's been kind of this adversarial relationship with some of these people in that, one day tour.
Right.
You can search LinkedIn and there's tons of people out giving their opinions about it. But I agree with you. I think they got to figure out some way to make that happen. And, maybe they'll come and talk about it at some point. But I think that they're primed to do it.
Something also that I like to add there, forget about hosting you in their home or an experience. Let's go back to the concept of the creator economy, which ties back to Posh, right? And I think it's really, can I create my home to be a hospitality experience? Can I design my house, or can I make the experience to host other people here? With my knowledge of my own local town, can I make this experience for people that are out of town? It's, to some degree, it's the own individual creator economy.
The difference with Airbnb is that model works because they own it.
Yeah.
They're the platform for it. But I think what a lot of other, third parties or who would be their suppliers in a lot of ways for official experiences done with a host, they're looking for distribution, right? So in the same way, we're probably a couple years out.
Mm-hmm.
What's stopping an Easel doing, or a Crew Fair or a Jam Pack doing a distribution deal with Airbnb to want to get access to their kind of host supply on experiences and vice versa, but them to put a music experience on that platform, which I think it's probably easier on non-Airbnb type of PAs. But that's kind of the next step. So you have other people sort of creating the experience, but then being able to distribute. And what's going to happen is Airbnb is going to be like, I approve you, I don't approve you. They're going to curate each one of those those experiences that get to be on the platform. Or maybe they'll do some deal in the background and someone will be able to manage it for them.
Right. I mean, I also think there's a big demand in the travel space for curating experiences. Let's forget for a minute about music experiences. You're seeing a lot of smaller companies emerge, like Fora Travel. You also see Picasso, and they're the high-end travel experience from A to Z. Because when you're going on vacation, you don't want to stress about planning your vacation.
No, you don't.
Which is a first world problem really to have, but it's a thing.
It is.
And so I would be surprised if longer term companies like Airbnb or Expedia don't include some of those offerings in their platforms to make it even more easy for people to book their vacation, everything in-house with an advisor from end to finish.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Getting access, again, it comes back to tech.
Right.
And this is kind of the space that I'm in every day, is trying to find the complementary technology to take in that API of supply or vice versa, or distribute it. And Fora is a good example where they're a new tech company.
Mm-hmm.
They provide tools for advisors to set up shop and be their own, business, but they still have to get access for that advisor to that supply. So whether it's a hotel room or a rental car, whatever it might be, it's still bookable, so everyone gets their commission. And that's sort of the crux of it all,
mm-hmm.
is trying to get kind of this multi-layered platform that can accept new types of supply. That's going to, gives that advisor something to sell. Hey, wouldn't you love to go see Rufus Du Sol in Morocco? Yes, I would.
Right.
How do you actually book that? So I think that's where we're going to get to at some point.
Yeah. And if you turn that around, wild, unpopular opinion is, I think at some point, Live Nation or AEG will invest in hospitality brands.
Wow, I hadn't heard that one before.
I think if regulation gets tighter on Live Nation for having this choke on the industry, the easiest way for them to manage that is to own or co-own hospitality brands in the hotel space, where they can have, imagine if Live Nation owned a popular hotel in Vegas where they also have the venue to host all their acts.
Well, it's funny. Have you heard of the Vi Resort Phoenix.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's kind of the first piece, but they don't own it, right? There's a bunch of developers who have built the space. And the audience who does not know, look it up. It's a beautiful place, byresort.com. We'll talk to them about doing part of the podcast, but essentially it has an 11,000 person venue where suites and standard rooms face the stage. And so Live Nation is the promoter within that venue space, but it's also a hotel. So there's a bunch of new tech that's inside of it. So I think you're right. I think that's, whether they know it or not, or much smarter people are looking at this obviously from a strategic perspective, but like that's probably where it's going to have to go.
Right. Like imagine this year after all of Taylor Swift's concerts and tour, right? Do you like imagine the impact that these shows have on local economies, starting just with hotels?
It's huge. I mean, she injected another $5 billion into the U.S. economy. That was hotel, air, restaurants, merchandise. And what's interesting about, so you could flip that as well and come back to what we were talking about at the beginning. It's not just, she didn't get a piece of that $5 billion, by the way. She made billions, but she didn't get a piece of that impact. Is that something that you think a Taylor Swift would do, like create her own ticketing system and her own packages where you come to taylorswift.com and be able to make that happen and buy it?
Yes and no. I mean, imagine an experience totally curated by the person that you're paying thousands to go and see, or her team. And she cares a lot about her fans, so I'm sure she would make the experience easy breezy. But really creating a ticketing company from scratch.
Or
partnering with one, yes. But this is, we were talking a little bit earlier about this, the rise and the collapse of a lot of ticketing players.
Right.
And I think a lot of people think, oh, it's, a service fee based business. If I sell a ticket, I make 10, 15, 20, 40% of the ticket, whatever that looks like, right?
Yep.
On top of the ticketing revenue. It's not that easy to make a good one, right? And so I think if she partners with the right ticketing platform, imagine if she had like an RFP process and she reaches out to a bunch of players and she says, if you want to work with me, these are the requirements that you have to fulfill. If your product doesn't have it, you have 9 months to build it. Yep. But this is the only way I'll contract with you.
I think she's probably, there's a handful of artists who have that type of power.
Right. She's one of them.
Yeah. Which is interesting to think about because in the RFP process, Ticketmaster's in there, right? And all the big guys are in there. And depending on the venues that they're going to be in, can they be that nimble to be able to build something that's customized or at least have 8 of the 10 things on the checklist to make it happen? It would be a struggle. It would be tough.
It'll be tough. I think the biggest challenge there is not so much building the tech, because if you're going to get a service fee for selling Taylor Swift tickets, that's going to get you moving to build whatever, she wants and her team wants. I think the hardest thing is the venues, right? Like if you're doing a show on Red Rocks, you need to use Access. If you're doing a show, I don't know, somewhere else where Ticketmaster's at, you need to use Ticketmaster's. So the travel, the experience of buying tickets in the iconic venues becomes disjointed.
So that basically answers the question, right?
Right.
It would be tough for her to even think about putting together her own direct channel for her experiences.
Yeah.
So I like to end our time usually with on Tickets to Travel with, if you had an unlimited budget, what would be the perfect travel experience for you, Natalia? Ticket plus hotel, anything that you could do. What would be the perfect event plus hotel experience for you?
You're going to laugh.
Probably not. I've heard of it, but hey.
I'm sure you've heard of Canyon Ranch. So imagine blending Burning Man with Canyon Ranch.
Wow.
So you have the whole wellness, healthy experience, and you have the type of talent that goes to Burning Man. By the way, I've never gone to Burning Man because I don't have, it's dusty. I like to shower every day and take my time.
I get it. So you're talking about a large wellness festival, and who would headline this?
I would probably say Rufus would be a great headliner. Lane 8 would be another one. Black Coffee would be great.
I know Canyon Ranch. Were you talking about that as the destination, or is it just the brand vibe? Because what's the destination for that?
I mean, there's a few Canyon Ranch right around there. I think the one in Arizona is the first one. So that is supposed to be great, allegedly.
You'll get there. You'll get
Cough, cough, honeymoon coming up, maybe there.
Yes, congratulations. At some point.
And if not, and I think that would be a great space where you like rest. You have all these add-ons that, by the way, Canyon Ranch already offers and packages really well.
Right.
And then you have a production that's nearby on site that you go and see the DJs that you want to see.
Got it.
And you have the best of both worlds.
I'm trying to think. Did we try to do something?
Colin?
Because Bale was pretty brilliant in that there was one project where they were working through with big brands in the family category. Do you remember this?
Oh, yeah.
And so it would be hypothetically a Mattel Barbie experience in
Nickelodeon.
Dominican Republic.
Right.
Yeah. And no one's really made that happen yet. I think that would be a really interesting one to pursue as well.
Yes. I mean, I don't have kids, but I think as a parent, what a joy must be that you don't have to worry about your vacation. You have everything planned and all the activities are geared to entertaining your kids so you can relax and have some fun too.
Absolutely. I'm at the point with my kids that they just want to go on roller coasters and eat really bad food. So I don't know if that's really for me, but you're right. I would say you probably get to like 8 years old and below. There's tons of family who are just looking for that. And I think there are some like family festivals.
Like family friendly festivals, right?
Yeah, where you could do that. But well, thank you very much for joining me on the show today. And hopefully we could do this again soon.
Sounds great. Thank you, Mario, for having me.
The Tickets to Travel podcast is always brought to you by Expo Travel. Expo Travel is experiences optimized travel, assisting B2B startups and companies with business development in online travel and entertainment ticketing distribution. If your company is looking for ways to boost revenue, increase average order values, or activate your member base with either travel or entertainment ticketing, contact the team at Expo Travel for a consultation today. Visit xpotravel.com. That's xpotravel.com for more information.